Chapter 17. We pushed through an iron door on the opposite side of the magisterium from where we'd entered. Rashawn marched ahead of me, with Brug in the lead, but I found myself relieved that Amelia had taken up position on my 6 again, as had been her habit. During the illusion Caym had cast in all his trickery, she'd moved ahead. I was so used to her guarding my backside, her presence there convinced me this was all really happening. Dicini and Machini walked on either side, their tails dancing high and ears pricked at attention. I spent my attribute points and eyed the results.
Gemini Fowler, Shenhua, level 40 Shogun, Strength, 6, Dexterity, 124, Intelligence, 20, Wisdom, 3, Constitution, 87, Charisma, 20. Despite my will to succeed in our dungeon run, I couldn't resist the opportunity to read more about the new Skills tab. There were 3 skill trees with sub-tabs across the top of the panel. Clicking one revealed icons representing the correlating skills. The sub-tabs were labeled Elemental, Resource, and Enhancement. I perused them in turn. Under the Elemental tree, I found 3 branches to choose from. Samurai, Shogun Skills, Elemental, Resource, Enhancement.
I started with Elemental. The 3 branches under that tree were
Shock, Fire, Ice.
The interface indicated I had 3 unspent points. I started on the Shock branch.
Rank 1, plus 1% chance to score a critical hit with lightning skill damage. Rank 2, plus 3% chance to score critical hit with lightning skill damage. Rank 3, plus 5% chance to score critical hit with lightning skills damage. Bonus. If 3 points are spent in this branch, lightning skill critical hits will cause your enemy to be stunned for up to 3 seconds.
Spending the 3rd point in that branch brought the regular upgrade and a bonus. If they all worked that way, spending the 3 points in one branch might be the best way to go. Before I made any decisions, I'd have to see how different trees might interact with each other to create advantages. A stun of 3 seconds was an eternity now that I was dual-wielding katanas. I'd definitely keep it in mind. I scrolled to the next branch in the elemental tree, which was fire.
Rank 1. Skills causing fire damage now cause a burn effect adding 100% weapon damage over 5 seconds. Rank 2. The burn effect has a 15% chance to cause enemies to flee in terror for the duration of the effect. Rank 3. Enemies within 5 yards of fleeing enemies will also receive 50% weapon damage as fire over 3 seconds. Bonus. If 3 points are spent in this branch, fleeing enemies will leave a trail of fire in their wake, causing 25% fire damage to any who cross the path each time they come in contact with it.
I imagined setting my 2 blades alight and creating a chaos of fire streams across the ground before me. This just kept getting better. I like me some fire, I muttered.
What are you on about, then?
Amelia asked. I jerked. Sweet Jesus! I wish you'd stop doing that.
Then you'd get lazy. Now tell me what you're going on about.
Dicini quickened her pace to allot Amelia space to walk beside me. I leveled back there.
We noticed. You can't miss the funnel of golden light, really.
Right. Since I hit level 40, I've been presented with all these upgrade opportunities. Skill points, you know? Brug stopped, then Rashawn. When the warrior twirled, the priestess followed suit. He stepped around her.
What's this, then? Skill points? What are you blabbering about?
You know, for someone who knelt and offered me his services in exchange for immortality, you sure are aggressive today.
It's his nature, Amelia explained.
Brug smiled.
You've got me there, princess.
I'm not a princess.
You're related to the queen, and I don't suspect you've got a cock under that leather. So, you're a princess.
I'm her great, too many greats to count niece, not a princess.
A sideways grin crawled up his cheek.
Looks like one to me, sweetness.
In your finest dreams, brute.
Amelia leaned toward me.
You know how I said your mood swings? His is worse.
Well, no shit, Sherlock, I hadn't noticed. She cast me a confused glance, but it lasted all of a millisecond. Brug snapped his fingers a few times.
Skill points?
Yeah, I can select from 3 trees. You don't have these?
All I got was bonus attributes when I hit 40. Never heard of nothing like that. What's it say?
I read the first 2 branches aloud, then continued along the next branches in the elemental tree to fill them in about my ice options while learning it myself.
Rank 1. Ice damage. Causes chill effects. Affected enemies are slowed by 20%. Attacks against the same target have diminishing returns. Rank 2. Enemies under chill effects are slowed by 40%. Rank 3. Critical hits with abilities that cause chill effects will now freeze enemies in place for 3 seconds. Bonus. If 3 points are spent in this branch, critical hits against frozen targets might cause them to shatter.
By the light!
Brug whooped. He slapped my shoulder so hard I stepped sideways.
I'll go with the ice effects. I'd like to see these skeleton shits explode into ice shards I could put in me drink.
Amelia shook her head.
Nonsense. The fire would cause much more significant damage against packs. The ice is obviously for single targets.
Rashawn raised her chin in the superior way I'd grown used to.
All have benefits, but one of Gemini's skills shoots lightning from his sword that can strike up to 3 targets. He would gain a stun advantage against multiple targets. This is the best, I think.
I eyed the flashing icon next to the elemental tree and read the tooltip aloud. Bonus. If all 9 points in this branch are selected, all your elemental attacks cause 15% more damage.
Ooh,
Brug said, nudging the same shoulder more gently with 2 fingers.
That sounds nice, but don't reckon it does you a lot of good until you get, 2 more levels?
Destiny flashed her green eyes at me.
Did you say there were more tiers to choose from?
Yeah, they're called trees. The sub-tabs are branches. Amelia nodded.
Read us more branches, unless you can share them.
I arranged the trees on my interface, reached out and tried to sweep them toward Amelia.
Only players can view skill trees in Enora online.
Nope. Looks like the goddess wants me to keep them. Amelia flashed a look of disappointment. I thought the restriction was kind of stupid. But I'll read you the rest. She brightened. Even Rashawn seemed enthusiastic. Brug turned.
Maybe we should keep moving. I assume the goddess's chosen can walk and read at the same time.
He set off. We followed. I jumped over to the enhancement tree so I could save the resource-oriented branches for last. The 3 branches under the heading held more interesting names.
Slippery, Diamond Skin, Immunity.
I started on the left.
Slippery, Rank 1, plus 1% chance to parry or dodge melee attacks. Rank 2, plus 3% chance to parry or dodge melee attacks. Rank 3, plus 5% chance to parry or dodge melee attacks. Bonus. If 3 points are spent in this branch, successful dodges or parries will freeze opponents for 1 second to allow for counterattacks. Counters are not automatic.
Brug spoke while still facing ahead of us.
The goddess gives you a lot of options.
Rashawn raised her chin.
You give me pause to wonder what about the word Shenhua you don't understand. The goddess blesses him in many ways. None of us should be surprised, for we all benefit greatly by his bonding with us.
You don't have to get so uptight about it, priestess,
Brug rumbled.
We're all on the same side here.
He quickened his pace. Amelia turned to pace backward. I noticed how her strides were equally as long and effortless as when she paced forward. A shallow frown formed on Rashawn's features.
Yes, I suppose we are.
Then when Brug was far in front of her, she muttered,
When you're not taking it on yourself to kill the one person who might guide us through this dank place.
I heard that,
Brug barked, but not without a twinge of humor. When we reached the end of the hall, he pointed left. We set off down the side passage. I noticed no sign of the mold covering the walls since we encountered Morgan, which thankfully eradicated half the stench. Torches glowed in a line again, and I wondered for the first time who was lighting them. Maybe the wizard. Maybe they were magical. Maybe it was game shit. I analyzed one.
Torch. Level 1. Type, one-handed club. Slot, main hand or offhand. Quality, common. 1 to 4 melee damage. +2 fire damage.
That was useful. Not. A strange warbling sound echoed from somewhere down the hall, or maybe an adjacent one. My ears perked up, then I turned my head to one side as if I could home in on it. Amelia hustled forward.
Sounds like fighting.
Cool. Let's go wreck something. Brugh chuckled up ahead.
Now the mythics speak in my language.
He charged forward, ripping the massive sword off his back. Amelia slipped between the Michonne women and Rashawn, then caught up to the warrior. Rashawn's robe waved, tails wagged, and footwear smacked stone floor as we hustled up the dark hallway.
Doorway right,
Amelia called. We skidded to a halt, then crept. Another sound warbled from further down the hall as Brugh peered around the corner and into the room. A blur of silvery motion swept into the hallway, then slammed into Brugh's right shoulder. His torch tumbled to the floor as blood erupted from the wound. It splattered Amelia's mud-covered face. She spat, then drew an arrow while our warrior staggered backward.
Damn it!
He clapped one hand against the gushing wound as the other raised the sword across his body to protect from another assault. The silvery head of the axe that struck him withdrew into the room. I never saw its wielder before it was gone. Rashawn raised her hand. It glowed white, then Brugh's wound closed on one end, and the skin slowly stitched together. With my katanas at the ready, I slipped through the crowd. The axe swept down again, and I raised both swords to block it. The force against my weapons drove me down to one knee, but I managed to maintain my grasp. I glared up at a towering humanoid in full plate armor, its helmet covering its entire face, except for a slit revealing glowing eyes. The axe forced down the X I'd formed with my swords until its curved blade quivered inches from my face. Brugh burst forward and launched into the attacker while its weapon was committed. The heavy impact sent them tumbling, and our enemy's armor clanked and clattered as the duo rolled. A melee struggle ensued, with Brugh wrenching his arms around his target's neck, and the plated one trying to pull the warrior into a bear hug.
Chaos Knight, level 51, undead, elite. Chaos Knights are an undead order who serve Hokram. Known for their enhanced melee power, they also use shadow mana to cast curses upon their enemies. Strength, 223. Dexterity, 34. Intelligence, 23. Wisdom, 21. Constitution, 133. Charisma, 1.
Freed of the knight's weight against my crossed swords, I shot into the room and approached the wrestling figures. The area was bathed in the orange glow cast by torches burning on each of the four walls. A circular rune etched in the stone floor took up much of the center. I spied no furnishings, which made sense considering the Chaos Knight was undead. I didn't think they spent a lot of time lounging. Brugh grunted, raised an elbow, then slammed it into place between the Chaos Knight's helmet and chest plate. There was no noticeable effect. Dancing from side to side, I sought a place to insert the tip of my sword, but the enemy's metal protection left no point of entry. Plated arms squeezed Brugh's midsection, and he growled as his back bent under the pressure. Amelia ran past me with an arrow nocked, but she had no clean shot. Rashawn stood at the doorway. Machini and Decini blew past her, then took up positions on opposite sides of the struggle. I dashed forward, reared back, then kicked the undead in the side of its head. The helmet rattled, and a shock of protest from the nerves in my foot ran up my leg. My calf locked up, and I dropped to one knee, cursing. Decini dove past me and slammed onto the pile-up. Brugh rolled off one side, then grabbed the bottom of the helmet covering the knight's face. It raised its fists, then a purple glow bloomed around them. "Move!" I ordered, but it was too late. Decini flew through the air right over me. If I hadn't been crouching, she would have bowled me over. Brugh slammed into the opposite wall. I scanned the floor for Brugh's weapon, then kicked it toward him. The knight's helmet had torn mostly free of its head, revealing gray, scarred flesh with puke-green outlines surrounding bloodless wounds. It still covered its nose and eyes, but I didn't need a lot of real estate to target. At least, I thought I didn't. I twirled my main hand katana overhead, charged it up with another low swing, then brought it down, aiming for the exposed neck. The sword's path altered halfway through its swing and caught the knight in the chin. It was commonplace in Enora for me to swing at a higher level, or in this case, higher level elite, only to have my aim redirected to keep things fair. Then there wasn't much I could do about it but hack away until I got lucky. But the knight grabbed the blade lodged in its chin, squeezed so it sliced into his hand, then ripped it out of my grasp. I was forced to either let go or be pulled toward him, so I relinquished the blade and swapped out my offhand weapon to my main hand.
Attribute change. -15 dexterity. -15 constitution.
Losing my higher level weapon meant losing some power, but these days the effect was minimal compared to my overall stats. Brug reached past his sword, grabbed the knight's helmet, and flung it off. The glowing yellow eyes acquired him. It rolled into push-up position, then shoved to its feet while Brug rolled away to hurry to stand. An arrow zipped past my shoulder, lodged into the undead's neck, then exploded. A massive gap appeared where the rotted flesh had been. The knight barely recoiled, but it definitely noticed. Charging toward me, it threw out one arm, cast me off like a sack of rice, then charged Amelia. Destiny roared a taunt, but the undead ignored it. Amelia rolled away at the last second, brought up her bow, then launched another arrow. But the creature bent sideways at an unnatural angle, and, for the first time I could recall since I'd met Amelia Horn, she missed. The arrow lodged into the stone wall, then exploded like the previous one. Shards of stone flew everywhere, and I covered my face with my arms. Messini yipped, and when I looked up, her face streamed with blood from the bridge of her nose. The cartilage was twisted sideways, and she raised a hand to staunch the flow. Rashan cast a heal, then the Michonne screamed anew as the cartilage twisted itself back into place. Ouch, that sucks. The knight grasped its axe polearm combination weapon. Brug charged. Destiny charged from another angle. The knight threw out two fists. Destiny took one in the chest, stopping her dead. But Brug had much better luck. The warrior slammed into the arm at full tilt, forcing the knight backward. Then he gripped it and twisted. The undead's appendage snapped at the elbow. I did a quick analysis.
Chaos Knight. Health, 77%.
Not good enough, I muttered. From my position on my duff, I wasn't doing much to aid in the fight, so I rolled and rose. My first move was to recover my discarded katana, while Brug's sword clashed against the knight's axe.
Attribute change. +15 dexterity. +15 constitution.
The knight blocked an incoming blow from Brug's sword. Both strained for supremacy as Brug bore down, then the knight countered. The undead's face began to glow green. The yellow tinge of its eyes brightened. The beams of light shot out of them, slamming into Brug's chest. The warrior faltered backward, fighting to keep his feet, but he pounded the floor on his backside.
Chaos Knight casts Curse of Decay.
Brug's flesh grayed, then turned green. He slapped one hand to his chest. His breaths came in short huffs as his skin morphed from the neck up. The color in his eyes faded to gray.
Brug, -177 HP. Curse.
Rashan raised both hands and swirled them over. Blue tracers of light followed each as she muttered strange words under her breath.
Rashan casts Expunge. Spell level too low. Partial effect. Curse of Decay does 50% damage. Brug, -89 HP.
Our main tank was taking significant damage every 3 seconds despite the limited purge, but his high constitution would hold him up if we could finish off the night. Since the area around it was empty, I raised my fist, then focused on the dark energy surrounding me. I drew it close until it chilled my bones, then I unleashed my new agnostic power, hoping upon hope I could buy us a second or two. A glowing ethereal hammer with a massive square head spun from the ceiling above, then bright white energy exploded around the knight.
You unleash Evocation of the Shenhua. Hit. Spell level too low. Partial effect, stun, 3 seconds.
Hit it with everything you have, I yelled. Destiny charged. Her shoulder slammed the lumbering undead into the wall. Brug struggled to his feet, teetered, then righted himself, while Amelia unleashed an arrow with a red glow. I charged up my swords with 3 swings and a couple spinning motions, then both burst into flame. The arrow lodged into the knight's forehead. Cracks webbed out from its tips and burned bright. Destiny swung her swords wildly, and though few hit the spots for which she aimed, she managed to put a reoccurring dent in our attacker's health before he recovered from the stun. A boomerang flew into view to cut a notch in the side of the knight's face, but the demon snatched it from the air, raised it in one hand, and snapped the weapon in two with a clench of its fist. It hefted its axe, and the spike on top lodged itself into Cinny's chin. The Michonne was raised off the ground, then tossed to one side. Blood gushed from her wound. Rashawn began to glow with healing energy, so I eyed the knight and turned my attention to setting a bitch on fire. My katanas sliced the air in figure-8 motions, both to protect me and distract. Although the level difference affected my aim, the sun shone on a dog's ass some days, and the numbers always worked out in the long run, when one lived that long. One blade sliced through the knight's face and melted its dead flesh. The loose, knotted black hair streaming from its head and down across its cheeks was set ablaze. It raised a heavy boot and kicked me dead in the center of my chest, but I rolled as I hit the ground as Brugh burst into view, taking up the spot I'd occupied.
Enough of you!
Brugh swung in a circle, extending his arms to their full length, then came around with a fierce upswing. He sliced the knight's head in half from the lower half of his jaw to the opposite temple. Then, in an agile motion I'd have never expected, he brought the axe in a high to low arc as he jumped and twisted in midair. The blade sliced through the knight's face, shearing off the top half of its head beneath its eyes.
Brugh has defeated Chaos Knight, 7,354 XP.
The undead stood there, balanced on both boots, refusing to fall despite its end. Amelia grabbed the arrow she'd lodged in its neck earlier, then yanked it free. The knight tumbled to the ground next to her as she inspected the arrow. Seemingly satisfied, she returned it to her quiver.
Well, that was fun.
Brugh spat a glob of green goo.
Fun for who?
I always find vanquishing the soldiers of darkness rewarding,
Rashawn said. Brugh coughed faux laughter.
Ha! Did a lot of vanquishing, did you, priestess?
Wasn't it you who said we were all on the same team just moments ago?
Amelia, Machini, Decini, and I shared a glance, then burst into laughter. The priestess didn't even break a smile. The stone-faced delivery was perfect. Rashawn in a nutshell. Brugh waved a dismissive hand.
Ah, the lot of you would be cut in half if I wasn't here.
I hacked words through my laughter. No one's doubting that, big fella, but she's got you there. Brugh chuckled.
Yeah, fair enough.
He nodded as he bent to pat down the knight.
Fair enough.
I strolled up and watched. Anything good? He shook his head.
Damned undead. Rarely pay off.
How about the axe? I bent down, grasped it, and was surprised by its weight. I fumbled it. Then I used both hands and heaved it to my chest.
Vile True Silver Pole Axe of the Grizzly. Level 51. Type, two-handed axe. Slot, weapon. Quality, very rare. Durability, 92 of 100. 172 to 235 melee damage.
Brugh winked his eyes and scanned the weapon.
Nah, sword's better.
Well, none of us can carry it, but I'd bet it will melt down into something nice. I've never heard of true silver.
It'll fetch a nice price, too,
Brugh said.
I know smiths in New Nin who'd pay a high bounty for it, Gemini.
I nodded, then focused on a slot in my inventory to bag the axe. I want to give Probert first go at it, but if he can't work with it, we'll decide then. Amelia half bowed her understanding. Machini paced to the corner and picked up the two pieces of her boomerang. She gazed mournfully. I approached and peered over her shoulder. Got a backup? She shook her head.
No, but I still have my sling.
Awesome. I like the sling. Besides, you can still cast the replenishing boomerangs for the party, right? She nodded. With Brugh around, you could just use the support function of the ethereal boomerangs between slingshots then.
Okay, Gemini.
She dropped the halves onto the floor where they clattered and fell still. I eyed the plate covering the knight's corpse, then compared it to the lighter chest plate with sleeves of chainmail over Brugh's bulging form. Maybe you could use his armor.
Nah, too constricting. Gotta keep my swings loose.
The way I'd seen his sword slice through the air with enough ferocity to cut through two people, I wasn't about to argue. He gave it a quick sniff.
Besides, he stinks, and there's no saying how long he's worn it. You're free to bag it, but you'll be scrubbing to get that smell out.
I chuckled. I'll keep my inventory space freed up, thanks. The warbling sound echoed from down the hall outside. I eyed the elven woman. You know, Amelia, if that's a fight, it must be a hell of one. Brugh sheathed his sword and stepped into the hallway.
And if it's our people fighting, we should probably go see about them.